Safe to Fly, en app for alle brukere av droner. Tjenesten er alltid oppdatert og enkel å bruke slik at du finner all informasjon du trenger på ett sted. Fly sikkert. Alltid.
My name is Florian Ledoux. I'm a wildlife photographer and the specialty of my work is using drone. And this year I'm super happy to have won with this photo the Norway Best Drone Photographer of the Year, and it's a big honor for me. Today I'm gonna share with you how I use drone to inspire and show the changes that are happening in the Arctic and Antarctica. So in 2017 I had the chance to go on board of a big sailboat for a long expedition of 2 months from West Greenland to North Canada in Nunavut, it's called, on Baffin Island, more precisely. This was a great opportunity to start using more drone in my work and document more of the Arctic with this new point of view. And I always wanted to bring a new point of view on the wildlife. So we set up there, and as we arrived there, it allowed me to create such images, you know. On this image there is 2 polar bears. I don't know if you can see them. There is one at the top, it's a tiny dot on the ice, and there is another one at the bottom that is walking, so you can see a shadow. But anyway, you know, this photo clearly shows us the space they occupy, the polar bear. So basically it's typically a new point of view that we didn't have before. So then I came a bit closer to one of the bear. You know, so I always try to approach really slowly in order to get natural behavior. And this one was resting on the ice. Again, you know, it's very graphic from above, and people always got surprised by the colors and what they see, but also we can understand how the ice is melting. So, of course, as you can see now, there's not only drone in my work, and this is because I want also people to understand what they're looking at from above. Because drone is such a unique point of view. It's very specific, and people might get lost into what they see, as it's very abstract. So by keeping some close-up shot of animals, I want people to connect with those animals and feel emotions and see faces, recognize a smile. So that's why I still have normal photography also of the wildlife in my work. This is a pod of beluga. And again, you know, we got in this bay, we thought there was waves because there was like a lot of white lines on the horizon and it was windy. But after a while, when it got quiet again, what we noticed is those lines were belugas, and there were so many. And that wasn't until I put the drone in the air that we realized that there was thousands, but literally thousands of belugas in a bay. And here we have a much higher view, which, you know, wasn't high enough actually comparing to the size of the bay and the amount of belugas. But just on this image there is more than 500, and it's pretty amazing to realize yeah, how they all gather together in a bay. This is a unique point of view on narwhal. You can see that there's some fish in front of his tusk, so he's trying to get some fish. Again, you know, narwhal don't really come at the surface much. They don't have a dorsal fin, so you wouldn't see them much unless you are underwater or unless you use drone and you can reveal them from above. And this is quite high aerial view of the ice in East Greenland in winter, and I love the patterns, the lines, and it's kind of a piece of art, and I think the drone allows us to capture the art that nature is creating. But as you know, every story has a beginning, And my story started when I was 10 years old, when my parents took me to Rovaniemi in Finland. That was a while ago, but I think that's when the polar bug started in my head. And after that, I was not super smart for school, so I kind of wanted to work quite quickly. So I got into technical studies, and I ended up working in the Navy on an helicopter that is full of electronics. During that time, I had a lot of time off, which allowed me to travel, and naturally I went back towards the north. During those travels, like Iceland, Lofoten, Greenland, and other places, I started to create a set of images working on photography. Of course, at that time there was no drone. That was probably 2010 or even before, and I was just developing my love for nature and for the north, further north, further north, further north. Every trip was a bit further north. So then I used those photographs that you see now to apply in the Navy to become a photographer in the Navy. So a year later, I ended up being a cameraman and photographer in the Navy. And of course, as you can see on this image, I was always choosing or seeking the mission in the north. So in that way, I came back in Norway, Trondheim, and a bit more for the north. But I knew it was not enough. It was not the end for me, because I had this quest of nature, and I knew that being a photographer in the Navy would just allow me to become a better photographer, to capture the emotion that I feel for nature. So then I did also my first trip to Greenland at that time of my life, when I became photographer in the Navy. And it's only, I think, after a few years going to Greenland that I brought the first drone, which was the Phantom 3. The Phantom 2 wasn't good enough for, flying in a cold and having a GoPro. But even the Phantom 3 was struggling so much in the Arctic with the compass and with the cold. It was very challenging, at the beginning, and I lost a few drones. But I kept pushing and pushing until one day I saw this ad on internet that there was a sailboat looking for someone to help on board, and that's when I decided to quit the Navy suddenly in 2 weeks to follow my dreams basically and become a full-time wildlife photographer, focusing my work on the Arctic and Antarctica, because this is where my passion, my love is. So I went on this expedition, a lifetime expedition, which you saw the photos at the beginning. And that's when I started to really include and understand the power of drone photography and drone footage. So this expedition was incredible, and when I came back, this photo went crazy around the world, has been published in many magazines, got a lot of awards, and then that was the start. But I thought, okay, that's great, I have a few images from Baffin Island, I need to do more. And then I decided to go back on expedition, go to Antarctica for a new adventure, and try to do what I've done in the Arctic, but in other places with other species, and try to understand how they use the ice, how the changes are happening also in the area. So on this image we can see how the crab-eaters seals are sharing a floe of ice after they spend the night feeding on krill. So that's when they were feeding the night before. Again, this aerial view allows us to understand how they were all working together to feed on the krill, and they were all coming at the same time to breathe together at the surface in this open water pocket. That's another crab-eater seals. This time is alone, so it's also interesting to see that sometimes they are actually spending time alone, and most likely that this guy came on the ice from this crack that we can see on the right hand side of the image. This is another view that I like, is that again, whales or aquatic mammals or animals, you wouldn't be able to see them without the drone, unless you're underwater. But like now what we can see is that she's feeding right at the surface, feeding on krill. She has her mouth wide open while she's just, that's well, it's the same place and the same almost photo than we saw before, but a bit wider, and we can also see another flow with another group of crabiter seals. I think, yeah, again we understand, like the geology or patterns of the ice around and how they are spread. There was like, I think 400 of crabiter seals flowing by in the morning this day. After that, I started to go a lot to Svalbard, which is now, I think, one of my absolute favorite place, to the point that I want to move there. And so that's an aerial image, again, top shot above a polar bear. He's not resting, as you might think. He's hunting. He's actively hunting. There was a seal not far in the water, and he was just standing at the edge of this iceberg. So that was in summer. There was no fast ice left, no pack ice left around the island. That was also during the warmest summer in Svalbard last year. And yeah, again, I love like how we can very much understand a behavior from a new perspective. This is another part of Beluga that was also in Svalbard, different type of water, different colors, but we also understand a bit more, how they swim together, and the quantity of them also. In Svalbard is not a big population, but it's a good way to document and count the wildlife. This one is above a walrus colony. So here a few of them just went in the water, so they go feeding and then they come back ashore in large colony like this, where they rest for a few days. Before we arrived there, from the boat we thought there was maybe, I don't know, maybe we thought 100, or I think even less, maybe 60 actually, we said with the other person. But when I put the drone in the air, what we realized is that in this main pod here, this main colony in the middle, there was 275 walruses. It's crazy to think about the amount of animal the drone can reveal. So that's the same polar bear that you saw from above, but this time is on the iceberg, and that's also with the drone. So that's why, comparing to the photo that you just saw before, this one allows us with the drone to have a wide perspective, even though I'm on more like a ground level. You have more like the animal in this whole environment, instead of having a tele zoom photo where it's quite tight and you don't really see where you are. This one you kind of understand the scene around and how things are walking in one way. In 2019, so I go back a bit in the past, I went to Greenland again as part of a team with 4 photographers. We all had different specialties, and of course mine was the drone. And we went to document the changes that were happening early in May, based on the studies of Jason Box. And his studies was saying that the lack of snow during the winter and the early warm temperature would result in a big melting season. And it has been the case during the summer, but we already saw it in May. In May it was plus 20, when it's supposed to be, minus, and we're still supposed to have snow boots, we can go dog sledding, we need a jacket, but we went shorts, sunglasses, and it was plus 20, and that was quite scary and alarming. And then of course what we could see from the sky on the ice sheet is this kind of images, which is beautiful, but it's very sad, because the more blue is the ice, it means it's darker, and darker colors absorb more light, so it melts even faster after that. So it was really sad, as it was even beautiful at the same time. What I like with this kind of point of view is, even though it's not a top shot with the drone, it still allows me to be in a place where I wouldn't be able to be as a human. So it's like a remote camera that I can bring in places where I'm not capable to go, even though I'm, you know, an outdoor person and I like ice climbing and skiing. I wouldn't be able to go in there because it's a calving glacier, which means those crevasses are moving forward and collapsing into the sea, calving into the sea. So that would be really dangerous to be there. Then back in 2020, that was when we experienced the warmest temperature ever in Svalbard, 21.7 degrees in July. And of course the drone, as you can see on this image, allowed me to capture those changes and warm temperature as the host fauna ice sheet, or ice cap, sorry, was melting a lot. And it was creating beautiful patterns, of course, as you can see here. So that's a closer view again, you know, allowing me to be basically where I would not be able to be, you know, that close with a wide angle. I believe that images and as photography and footage can help us to reconnect people to nature, and that it's one of the big issues we are facing, and I believe that with drone, bringing a new perspective is really important to understand those changes. So I want to share with you this short film called I Am Fragile that I made after the expedition in Greenland and Canada.
As spring returns to the high Arctic, the ice cracks and melts under the power of the returning sun. And with the sun, life returns to this frozen world. Polar bears, Arctic foxes, seals, walruses, narwhal and whales roam the Arctic in search of food. In just a few summer months, these animals have to find enough food in order to survive the next winter. Soon enough, the sun sets once again for many months through the seemingly never-ending polar winter. With greater ice melt shattering their essential hunting and breeding grounds, many species become refugees in their own natural habitat.
Last winter I've been doing a big project in Svalbard with a lot of crazy drone images. In this project, drone made a difference. And what is amazing those days, you know, is that drone allow us to get those images, but better and better than before, because they are facing the cold like they couldn't before. I was flying by minus 45 degrees Celsius in strong wind, and of course it was hard, it was painful, you know, I've got my hands frozen as you can see here, and it was brutal. Every shot was a battle, but we've got a lot of unique things. So to end, I'd like to share a little bit of how I work with wildlife, drone and nature all together to create those beautiful images. And I think it's very important to understand that you need to spend a lot of time on location to get the animal used to it and make sure you don't threaten them and don't scare them. But I think that's very important, and that's why I was able to get a lot of behavior and natural things happening in the images. And it's like when you approach wildlife on the ground level, you know, you don't run to them. So it's the same with the drone. You need time, you need to approach from far away down the wind, and then I use a lot the tripod mode once I'm close, so it doesn't make any, you know, strong move or sharp noise. And then yeah, a lot of time basically. That's how I work. Thank you for listening. It has been a pleasure to be part of this drone meeting, and I hope you enjoy it. And if you have any question, don't hesitate to contact me. You can find easily my contact on my website.